Well, good morning. Today I am testing the DJI Osmo Action 5 in their many different color modes, filming modes. We have the normal 10-bit mode, we have HLG, and we have D-Log-M. We're gonna test all three of them. Right now we are in normal 10-bit mode with the neutral color profile. Pardon my roosters back there. You're also listening to the DJI Mic 2 via the official DJI Lavalier mic, which is connected directly to the Osmo Action 5 Pro. Now, as far as setup and exposure and everything and white balance, I switched the camera over into auto white balance for a second and then switched it back over into manual mode because I've done this test before, and if I just set it to the standard 5600K, it seems to have this really pink magenta color cast on the entire image, and it's very hard to get rid of. So what I did actually today, I pointed the camera at this little gray card very, very closely so that it would take up most of the frame. I switched over into auto and then back into manual real quick, and it got me 4800K as far as the white balance goes. I am at -1 EV as far as the auto exposure goes, and that's because, like I said, I did this test before, and in the direct sunlight like this is early morning, my face was just completely overexposed. I'm hoping that the -1 EV isn't too much. I'm hoping that it saves some of the detail and color in my face rather than basically making it completely white. Now let's go ahead and switch over from the normal 10-bit mode in neutral color over to vivid color. We're now in vivid mode, and like I said, all I did was switched it over to vivid. Left everything the same, -1 EV, I think 4800 on the white balance there. I am being very harshly lit by the sun. It's been up for maybe an hour at this point. It's, I think, 7 o'clock in the morning. So vivid, what I've noticed is that it just kind of gives you a little more contrast. Now, interestingly, I've also noticed that when I do a quick test between neutral and vivid, I noticed that for some reason the vivid frame is stretched a little bit. I have no idea why, but I've just noticed it. So as far as, normal 10-bit mode, just like the easier filming modes versus HLG and 10-bit, I have noticed that the skin and everything on the frame is a little more smoothed over. Right now I have the texture set to -1 and the noise reduction set to -2. So those are my settings to try to get a simple, out-of-the-box, pretty decent picture. So let's go ahead and switch out of normal 10-bit mode and over to HLG. Well, we're now in HLG, and HLG is a little tricky. It was meant to be displayed on HDR monitors, but when we film in HLG, we have to do some color management in post, switching it out of the native Rec 2100 over to Rec 2020, and then making sure that your timeline for exports is set to Rec 709. Hopefully that made sense. Like I said, it's just a little tricky. It seems like a lot more color information there, though I do find that D-Log-M does just as well and possibly even better. Let's switch over to D-Log-M. All right, we're now in D-Log-M, and with D-Log-M especially, I see that magenta kind of pink color cast when I just have my white balance set to 5600K, which is what I do with my Sony a7S III, and I usually come out with pretty darn good results. But for some reason on this Osmo Action 5, if I set that white balance to 5600K, it is just super pink, and it's really hard to deal with that. Now, I did, like I said, set the white balance to 4800K, and that's because I took this gray card here and put it really close to the screen, kind of something like that. And then I switched it over into auto white balance and then back into manual real quick. And then it saved whatever the camera was, suggesting for a white balance. So I'm hoping that that did a good job. We're gonna go ahead and switch it over to auto white balance right now so we can see what the difference is. The sun has obviously risen a little bit since I started this video, and maybe the white balance would have changed. So let's go ahead and switch this D-Log-M over into auto white balance and see what that does. Okay, well, now we are in auto white balance. Did anything change? Did we notice any differences straight out of the camera, that is? So that is one thing, that obviously D-Log-M is a flat color profile. I will be showing you, and I may have already, the flat out of the camera look. and then I'll switch over to the official DJI LUT that's on their website that you can download. I think it's called Vivid version 1. And then I'll switch over to some tweaks that I've made, and I edit in Adobe Premiere if you're curious. So my quest here is just to find out if normal 10-bit mode in any of these settings can be good enough out of the box. I do like D-Log-M. When I pixel peep, it does provide a lot of detail, more detail than any of the other modes on this camera, and even more than my iPhone 12 Pro when it's on its widest, 0.5 lens. Speaking of that, why don't I give you an example of exactly what the iPhone 12 Pro at the 0.5 lens looks like. All right, this is the iPhone 12 Pro now filming with the 0.5 lens. And from my earlier testing, I have found that the overall image quality, especially when it's bright outside like it is now, is really good, really good. The only downside is when you really pixel peep in there, you can see that, skin and textures and things like that are really like smoothed out. It almost seems like it has a lower bit rate because it kind of gets blocky and smudgy and stuff like that. When you get into the finer details, like some of the tree branches and stuff like that, and even on my skin and maybe my clothes. But I think this is good for a palette cleanser, so you can just see what the iPhone, a camera that we're all very familiar with, what an iPhone looks like compared to something like an action camera. And back on the Action 5 here, we are back in normal 10-bit mode in the neutral color profile. Like I was saying, rock steady in the wide setting. I have learned that the wide setting is best when you're filming yourself because it's not extremely warped on the edges. It is a little bit, but when you go into the dewarp setting, unless you're almost centered in the frame, it can really stretch and distort your face, and it just doesn't look good. I mean, it makes your head look twice as large as it normally is. Yes, it straightens out lines on, buildings and things like that, but that's probably the only case when you're going to want to use dewarp when you're filming buildings. Otherwise, I personally would leave it in wide. I think it's good enough. So what do y'all think? Is normal 10-bit mode good enough out of the box? Remember, this is -1 EV to try to get my skin not so blown out. I've already done this whole test one time before. I had it in -3, and in every single scene, it was completely blown out on my face. So this time, I'm going for broke here. I have done my best to make sure that this camera had its very best chance against the iPhone, for example, to give us a good image. I know I'm in terrible, harsh, direct sunlight. You know what? Why don't I spin around? Well, now the camera is facing the sun and it's kind of hidden by those trees back there. I'm just trying to get some differences in the overall exposure and how well it's going to do with me. Now I'm walking into the direct sunlight. Now the camera is going to be hit directly by the sun. That lens is very harshly lit by the sun. I'm curious what it's doing to me. I'm assuming it's not going to be doing a very good job because it's going to be dimming the whole frame down quite a bit since we're at -1 EV. So again, the whole quest here is to hopefully find an out-of-the-box setting for these action cameras. They are fun, they are very useful, but it can be a little bit difficult getting a really good picture out of these things. The DJI Osmo Action 5 Pro is their latest and greatest, their best at this point. This is February of 2025, and I like it. I like it a lot. All right, guys, well, if you like this one, please don't forget to hit that thumbs up. It really does help this video and the channel. And if you've watched this far and you're not a subscriber, consider subscribing. I'm Jimmy for the General Expert channel here on YouTube, signing out.